alternate model of universe, Manthan. To begin with, we had this observation wherein these two masses were coming together related to apple falling on the earth. But now we are saying that the gravity does not exist. Gravity being the force of attraction, which is a pull force, does not exist. But still we see that the force does exist. Apple is still falling to the ground and we are still grounded on earth. So what is it, that alternate force, which can create the same resulting force of these masses coming together? And it should not be pull. It has got to be push force. So the only thing which can make these masses come together other than the pull force is a push force. And what is it that can be pushing it external to the masses? There is nothing but space around it. So that is why we call it as spacity. One may say, how does that make a difference, because these are equal and opposite? Of course they are equal in magnitude, but the fact that they are opposite in direction, there is an important fact hidden. When you attribute the coming together of the masses to gravity, that means it is the mass which is doing all the work of attracting another mass. When you attribute it to external force like spacity, you are freeing the masses from the burden of attracting another mass. So the cause of force in case of spacity would be space itself, whereas cause of force in case of gravity is the mass. Now the most important thing for us to do is to prove that this force exists. For this force to exist, there should be pressure. Pressure is kg per meter square. But we know in the outer space there is absolute zero pressure, vacuum. So for us to prove that this force exists, we need to prove that the absolute zero pressure of outer space, which is vacuum, is not really vacuum but positive pressure. So let us try and study what is space pressure in vacuum. The air that we breathe in is said to be at atmospheric pressure of 1 bar. This is to say that it is equivalent to the weight of the air column that is acting on our head, all the way miles of air column that is there on the surface of planet Earth. As you go away from the planet, the surface of the planet Earth, this pressure keeps reducing because the air is becoming rarefied. That is why you see the mountaineers needing extra oxygen support when they go up the mountain. That is because it is not just the oxygen which is reduced, it is the air itself, the molecules of the air itself, they get rarefied. And when you go sufficiently away from the surface of the earth, what you encounter is outer space, and outer space wherein you do not have any matter whatsoever, and we call it as vacuum or absolute zero pressure. Let us try and understand the pressure scale. We started from here, atmospheric pressure of 1 bar. Let us assume that in this jar there are 4 molecules and this represents 1 bar of pressure. You add 1 molecule to it, the pressure increases, and this is what we measure on a gauge as gauge pressure. You remove a molecule, the pressure reduces. You remove these molecules such a way that the jar is completely empty. That is when we call it as absolute zero pressure. This is vacuum, you cannot go any below that. So ultimately the total pressure is gauge pressure, you add 1 atmospheric pressure and the absolute zero pressure being 0. But to understand the concept of absolute zero, let us try and study temperature scale a bit. So we have 0 degree centigrade and 100 degree centigrade to begin with. 0 is known as freezing point, 100 is known as boiling point. So this scale is based on the state of water as it exists at different temperatures. At 0 degree centigrade, it is as a solid in the form of ice. At room temperature in between, it is as liquid, and 100 degree centigrade and beyond, it exists in the gaseous state. As you can see, it is the mobility of the molecules which is important. In the gaseous state, the mobility is the highest. When you Consider it at liquid stage, the mobility is intermediate. But when you come to the solid state, the molecules are frigid. There is no mobility of the molecules. Now, as you may have observed, this is okay for water. But when you pick out any other molecule, let us say oxygen for that matter, water may exist as a liquid state at room temperature, but oxygen exists as gas at room temperature. For you to have a liquid oxygen, you need to go below the 0 degree centigrade. So, that means this 0 degree centigrade is not really truly 0. So, they wanted to find a real true 0, wherein at that level any atom that you pull out of the periodic table, it should exist in the state of solid, where the molecules are not moving at all. And that they found out was minus 273 degrees centigrade below the 0 degree centigrade. And this was called as absolute 0 temperature, because you cannot go below than that. So, now let us try and see if the absolute 0 pressure that we studied here, where we consider this as vacuum, can be stretched down. Now, what we said was that this jar has got 5 molecules, you keep on removing them, you reach a stage where there is vacuum in this gas, in this jar. Now, this system or vacuum is very similar to the vacuum that we consider in outer space. Outer space also no matter, no molecule, hence there is no pressure, vacuum. But you increase the horizon of this outer space, we will come across Earth planet, moon, solar system, a few galaxies. When you consider this as our own little beautiful universe and compare these two systems, do they look similar? They don't. In fact, this looks similar to the pressure where there is positive pressure. When we are saying that this is vacuum or 0, it is equivalent to saying to going to this system between these two molecules and say that the pressure between or intermolecular space is 0. Do we do that? We do not. We say that this whole system exists as pressure P. That means every point in this system is undergoing a pressure P, positive pressure. So, that means even here there is a positive pressure like this. In fact, if you want to really achieve a real true vacuum, you need to remove all these masses one by one. Just the way you remove the molecules from here to reach vacuum, you need to keep on removing these masses to such an extent that you reach the state of nothingness. It means there is no mass in the universe itself does not exist. That is the true absolute 0 pressure for pressure scale, and not the perceived 0 pressure that we call in a jar. So, what we are trying to say is that just the way this every molecule is being acted upon by a pressure P, which is positive pressure, in the same way there is positive pressure which is acting on everything, every mass in this universe, be it earth, moon, galaxies, atoms, any form of mass is being acted upon by a positive pressure. So, that external force which is acting on these masses is what we are saying is the external force which is making these masses come together. Whenever you have gravity and spacity, when there is a measured value of these two masses coming together, we should understand that it could be either because of gravity or spacity. If gravity exists, spacity does not exist. If spacity exists, gravity does not exist. So, we just now proved that there is positive pressure which is making these masses come together, and hence spacity exists. Since spacity exists, the measured values of these masses coming together cannot be because of gravity. To summarize, whenever there is matter in universe, there is density, because density is kg per cubic meter. So, you have mass in a given volume. So, when you have matter in universe, how much ever small it is, there is a density, there is kg per cubic meter. Where there is density, it leads to pressure, because pressure is nothing but kg acting on a unit square area, which is kg per square meter. So wherever there is pressure, the force is not far beyond. Because of the force, pressure exists. So this is how we are going to prove that spacity exists and the gravity does not exist. Now what is more important for us to understand is, in classical model of universe, we do not say why gravity exists. All we say is that gravity is the property of a mass, but we do not try and find out what is the business of this mass to attract another mass. Why should it attract another mass in the first place? So let us be a bit more harsh on Manthan or alternate model of universe. Let us try and find out why should there be spacity. We cannot just say it is a property of space. We need to find out what is the business of space that it is bringing two masses together. So for that we need to understand how space interacts with all other elements of the universe. So let us see